Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode series entitled All That I Have Learned from Tony Robbins over the years. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go on a bushwalk here in the west of Sydney at Northmead. I'm just going to go do a loop and go past a place called the North Rocks Dam and just loop around and listen to the birds and also just reflect on some of the wonderful things that I've learned over the years from Tony Robbins in person at his seminars. I went to UPW a couple of weeks ago, and I also did UPW back in 94 and 95, believe it or not. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a thing called the Echidna Loop Track, which will probably take about an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and I'll chit-chat along the way about stuff that just comes to mind. And as I said, I did do the Tony Robbins UPW a couple of weeks ago, as well as doing it back in 94 and 95. And I've also read two of his books, Awaken the Giant Within and Unlimited Power. And of course, listened to many of his tape series, many of his mastery tape series, and which included interviews as well with people who were leaders in their field. So where do we start? Where do we start today, given that it's episode 5 of about 50 or so? So I've done 4 episodes so far, and today we're going to kick off episode 5, and we'll just step through it. As I say, I don't script these things. They're not edited, these videos. They're just from the heart, and we just chit-chat along the way and see where it leads us and what we can gain from it. So I recall Tony Robbins asking a question and giving everybody a call to action. And it's a massive call to action, a very, very beautiful question, an open-ended question that allows one to think deeply about their current life, as well as what their life would look like if it was shaped in a better way. And he asked the question, what does an extraordinary life look like? What does a life look like which is lived on your terms? And I recall even 30 years ago when he asked this question, before he asked this question, he went around the audience in the room and he asked people on a scale of 0 to 10, where were they currently living their life? Was 0 being just absolutely terrible and 10 being wonderful. So people got to weight what their current experience was in terms of, were they living the best possible life that they could live, or was there room for improvement? And he went around the room and people just answered honestly, and the average answer, believe it or not, was that most people seem to think that they're living their life as a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And if you ask most people to rate their lives at the moment, most people would give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, unless you're very, very fortunate. But as we say, It's good to keep things into perspective and to wonder how things could be better. But I remember back then Anthony Robbins said something quite profound, and it resonated deeply with me. And he said that even if you're living your life at a 6 or 7 out of 10, there are just some small adjustments that you could make, but you need to ask yourself the question, what can I do now to turn this 6 or 7 experience into an 8 or 9 experience? And it's a very, very powerful question. What can I do right now to alter this experience to make it a better experience? And what you'll find is you only have to make small incremental changes to generate and deliver a much better result. So once again, as Anthony Robbins always says, the quality of a person's life is based on the quality of the questions one asks themselves. And we're all called to live life at a higher standard. As a parent, as a manager, as a boss, as a coach, as a partner, as a friend, we all need to live our lives at a higher standard. We all need to encourage others around us to live their lives at a higher standard as well. And this higher standard doesn't have to be dramatically different from what we're doing at the moment, but it just is based on a question, on the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. And as I mentioned before, the simple question is, what can I be doing right now? What additional things can I be doing right now to give me a better outcome, a better experience than what I'm currently enjoying? As I promised before, today's walk would be to a place called North Rocks Dam, and here it is. I remember when I first heard about North Rocks Dam, I was expecting to come and find a place with lots and lots of water, but this dam, believe it or not, was built in order to manage the water runoff that happens whenever there's a big storm, and to protect the downstream communities, Parramatta River, Parramatta Lakes, and all of those places. So this particular area here is just basically used as a safety point to ensure that things don't get out of control whenever there's a huge rainfall here in the west of Sydney. As you can probably see down there, there are some people admiring all of the artwork, the graffiti. This seems to be a graffiti artist's paradise. So we'll just continue our walk and talk. But as I mentioned before, we need to ask ourselves the question, and we need to try and raise the standard of our life in order to make the most of the time that we have allocated to us. Our lifetime. God gives everybody a lifetime to enjoy, and that lifetime could be 70, average out at 70 or 80 years of age. For some people it could be longer, for others it could be shorter, depending on what God's will is, and how you have responsibly tried to manage your health throughout the years as well, because we can all do little things that can make us healthier, that can maintain our health as well, and that can give us a better experience given what we have available to us. So, what does an extraordinary life look like? And once again, the interesting thing that we need to focus on and understand is that every person's life is completely different. The life that I'm going to enjoy is completely different to the life that you're going to have and enjoy. We have all had different pasts. We are all going to have a different present. I am here, you're somewhere else. And we're all going to most definitely enjoy a different future. And the future that we enjoy is going to be a cumulative addition, a compounding of all the decisions that we've made throughout our lives, of all the things that we've settled for. In life, you get what you settle for. If you settle for things that other people don't settle for, then that's going to be your life experience. Once again, Tony Robbins welcomes and encourages and cajoles us to have and to live a life at a higher standard. And that's why he also says that we need to have a peer group, a group of like-minded people who surround us, who are able to bend us, stretch us, and push us and pull us to live life at a higher and a better standard. Knowing very well that we all have family and friends, but as Anthony continues to remind us, that those family and friends are great because they can support us, they can love us, but in some ways they also limit us as well, because they don't want us to change. They want to maintain the status quo. They don't want us to be hurt by doing things that may cause an issue, that may not work out the way that we think it's going to work out. But we need to understand that every person has a different life. Every person has a different fate, and every person has God's will to express and to follow and to do wherever possible, because what God wills for me could be completely different to what God wills for you. You know, the calling that I have could be different, and will most probably be different from everybody else's calling, because we're all different from each other, and the reason why God makes us different from each other is to make us different for each other. I remember hearing a spiritual person say that God could have created everything exactly the same. He could have made every tree the same height, the same colour, the same pattern, and even made it monochromatic. But how boring would life be if everything was made to look, feel, taste, smell the same? Now, we need consistency by all means in our life. We need to know and to be able to predict how things are going to work out. But by the same token, we also need variety. We need inconsistency in our life to make our life interesting, to make it challenging, to make it an adventure that we can savor, that we can enjoy, rather than just to turn up, tick the box, and to live it as it presents itself to us. So once again, the key message is that each person has a different life, and we need to live our life on our terms. Just because it worked for your father, your mother, your grandfather, your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, your schoolmates and everybody else, doesn't mean that that life is the life that is designed for you. Each person has to take their risks to make their dreams, and to take and leverage their actions in order to live their life in a way that's going to fulfill them. Because Anthony Robbins says that the most important thing in life is to continually grow and develop, and most importantly, to show gratitude and to be fulfilled with what you have, and not to, have everything and still be unfulfilled and unhappy. A person who has gratitude, a person who feels fulfilled, according to Anthony Robbins, has more than what any billionaire in the world has. You can have all the money in the world, but it's not going to guarantee fulfillment. It's not going to guarantee that you're living and expressing and enjoying your calling. So once again, we need to be mindful that each person's life is different, and just because you have a truckload of money thrown at you and it comes to you without you doing very, very much, that in itself is not going to guarantee that you're going to have a great life and a life that was designed for you. We all have to go out and to calibrate and to do things in a way that's going to give us a better chance of fulfillment. So what does an extraordinary life look like? As we said, we can live life at a 6 out of 10, or we can live life at a higher number. Let me just see where this path goes. I think it goes down here. I haven't been along here for a while. Just bear with me so I get my bearings. Yes, I'm going in the right direction. So once again, before I lose my train of thought, Anthony Robbins reminds us that we need to live our life on our terms. On our terms, because each person's life, once again, just keep on saying the same thing over and over again. Each person's life is different, but it's different because that's the way our life, and that's the way things are designed by God. They need to be different so that it's interesting. They need to be different so that we can savor and enjoy. Just let me get across here just in case I step on a snake. Just looks a bit funny here with all the bark. So looks like nobody's gone down this path for a while. I remember coming along here all the time during COVID when we were in lockdown. We couldn't get out and about. I used to use this path all the time. But from what I can see here, there's a lot of undergrowth, and there hasn't been very many people come through here recently by the looks of things. And the reason for that could be that maybe the track may have been washed away with all the rains over the past couple of years as well. Anyway, like Marie Forleo says, and Anthony Robbins supports, we'll find our way, and we'll figure it out along the way. And the more you walk along the path, the clearer it gets, and the more you're able to see, determine and decide what you need to do to get to the next vantage point where you can redecide. So, an extraordinary life. We are all entitled to an extraordinary life. God wants us to live an extraordinary life, as long as what we're doing is honouring God with all our heart, mind and soul, worshipping God with all our heart, mind and soul, showing gratitude to God, and also, most importantly of all, or second of course to loving God, is to love our neighbour as we love ourselves. And there is a big clue there. When God asks us to love our neighbour, He asks us to love our neighbour as we love ourselves. So once again, I keep on harping on this point, but this is one of the points that Tony Robbins also harps on as well. You need to love yourself in order to be able to have the love to love someone else. As Tony Robbins also mentions, if you squeeze an orange, out comes orange juice. If you squeeze a lemon, out comes lemon juice. If you squeeze a person, if you create pressure on a person, out comes whatever is within that person. If that person is full of love, when you squeeze them, when you put them under pressure, when you put the Bunsen burner to their cheek, out comes love. If they don't have love, if they're not full of love and you pressure them, then what you get is ugliness. What you get is bitterness, sadness, depression, anxiety, and all the other things. So we need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest heavily in ourselves so that we can get to the point of maximizing our skills, our traits, building a strong character that will enable us to then be generous with all the skills and talents and charismata that God has given us, and that we've taken the time, we've taken the energy, we've invested the energy to improve and to make better. So once we have all of those things, then we can do a lot more with our lives, because God gives us money, God gives us strength, God gives us health, God gives us education, God gives us intelligence, capability, ability to be able to use those things to serve God, to be His partner in creation. He doesn't give us all those things just so we can live a better life ourselves and not be of value to anybody else. You know, all of those things are given to us in order for us to be greater and better and more energetic servants. Now, you often see people who are very successful who are also continuing to work. Now, you see people who are multi-millionaires and they're still working. Some are working for the love of money. Some are working just to pass their time. But many are working to be philanthropists, to help others other than their family to live a better life and to have opportunity where that opportunity may not have been availed to them given their current economic circumstances. So Tony Robbins opens up the discussion. You know, what does an extraordinary life look like for you? So we need to close our eyes, we need to open up our mind, open up our heart, and really sit and think about it. I remember years ago when I worked for IBM. I had a manager who was into personal development. He was a leader in his field. He was very well respected, very well educated, very effective in what he did, and very powerful as a speaker as well, very influential. And he told me that something that I should do, and many other people say the same thing, and Tony Robbins of course says the same thing, is that you need to have a thing called a dreams list. You need to sit down, be honest with yourself, and ask yourself the question, what are all the things you want to do in your lifetime, assuming that there were no limits, assuming that whatever you wanted to do, you could do. And he says, just get a big piece of paper, an A3 piece of paper, and just list things one after the other after the other. The places you want to visit, the things you want to own, the family and relationships you want to build, keep and foster. And he says, just keep on writing and writing and writing until your list is exhausted. And I remember doing that, and after maybe 10 or 12 items where I've written down I want a house with a wonderful postcode, and waterfront house, and cars and bikes and boats and all of that sort of stuff, holiday houses. After I finished writing that stuff, I started to slow down. And then I said to myself, well, I want to get married. I want to find a partner. I want to find the person who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. I want to have children to share experiences with, life experiences. I want health. I want to be closer to God. I want to serve God. I want to learn as much as I can so I can take those learnings and share them with people. I didn't quite know back then that I would one day have my own YouTube channel with over 1,600 videos of book summaries and life experiences. I never knew back then that I'd be able to put together a 50 video series or more on what I've learnt from Tony Robbins. But all of those things were written down. All of those things tapped into, the things that I've written down had tapped into my deep thinking, tapped into my soul, tapped into all of the things that I'd learnt over life from my parents, and I was able to log them into my subconscious. I was able to register those things in my reticular activating system. And in the background, what's been happening over the years, believe it or not, things have just manifest themselves without me trying to do it, but it just happens. And you sometimes say, did that happen by chance, or was something behind it more so than what my own desires were? I've since done, had a black belt in martial arts. I've become a dance fitness instructor. I've been a swimmer. I've swum 2 kilometres in all the ocean pools between Palm Beach and Cronulla. I've swum 100 laps at Iceberg's pool. I swam 100 laps at the pool there at North Sydney, that iconic pool which is under the Harbour Bridge. And I've done things that I never thought possible, and I've gotten through things which have been quite challenging. Not as challenging as things that other people are going through, but challenge for each person, what I've learnt, is relative. Something that is challenging to me may not be challenging to you. Something that is challenging to you may not be challenging to me. It's all relative, and each person is different in terms of the threshold of pain that they can withstand, in terms of physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. We all have different thresholds, and we need to respect that. And as Tony Robbins said, people are in different seasons in their lives. People are in different phases and chapters, and we need to meet those people where they are. Sometimes we need to meet ourselves where we are in terms of a season in our life, and not to be too tough on ourselves, but by the same token to raise the standard and make sure that we don't fall into that bad habits that come with poor thinking, negative thinking, and laziness, to try and lean outside our comfort zone at every opportunity, so that we don't waste our life. We don't waste the gift that God has given us. We don't waste the opportunity to be partners with God in creation, to not waste the opportunity to be partners in each other's growth and development. So Tony Robbins asks us, assuming that you could achieve all those things that you dream of, all of those things that you want to do, that you think will create fulfillment in your life, knowing very well that there are lots and lots of false summits. You may achieve certain things, you may achieve your whole dreams list. But if your whole dreams list is selfish, self-centered, and just about you, and doesn't include God, doesn't include your neighbor, doesn't include selflessness, then chances are that if you're wanting just to take out of life, then life's not going to be all that fulfilling for you, and you'll reach a summit and you'll look around and you'll find that you're there, you're lonely, you're isolated, and then you'll be wondering, what did I do? Is this all it is? And then start searching for other things to do. Once again, we need to make sure that what we're searching for is worth searching for. What we're trying to achieve is worth achieving, and not to get sucked into, as I mentioned before, the false summits that come through selfishness in our lives. So we need to ask ourselves, as Tony Robbins cajoles us to all the time, what is preventing you from making it happen? You need to sit down and try and visualize and try and think deeply and really deeply about what's stopping you from achieving all of those things that you want in your life. And Tony Robbins always says that the things that are stopping us are things which are called irrational fears, irrational doubts, irrational uncertainty, thoughts, belief systems that we've either built up ourselves or we've inherited from third parties, such as our parents, our grandparents, uncles, aunts, school friends, workmates, media, religion, customs, traditions. There are things out there, there are belief systems out there that infect us, that become part of us, and we don't quite know how we got them. But those belief systems are no longer relevant for you. Yet they are still holding us back. They are still preventing us from making fruitful decisions. They're stopping us from being action-oriented, option-oriented, and they just force us to look for certainty in a world where there is no certainty. The only certain thing that we have in our lives, as Tony Robbins says, is uncertainty. The certainty you can create in your own mind. The certainty is that in our lives we make lots and lots of decisions, and most of those decisions are the right decision. Most of those decisions that we make include logic, rationale, but they also include a thing called gut feel, intuition. And what intuition is our subconscious talking to us. Everything that happens, everything that comes through our senses, comes through our subconscious, gets registered, gets logged. And what we need to understand and appreciate and embrace is that our intuition, our gut feel, is there to serve us. It's how we feel. Sometimes it's not there to serve us. We need to override it with positive, productive, empowering self-talk and thinking. But most of the decisions that we've made in our lives have been good decisions, and we need to keep on doing. We need to keep on making decisions in our life, because it's those decisions that'll get us to a point where we have a better life, or at least enable us to move forward. So we need to try and visualize and identify who the enemy is, what's stopping us taking action, what's stopping us making progress, and then to try and work out what we need to do to get over, under, through those barriers. And most of those barriers are mental barriers. I remember at this year's Tony Robbins, we had a guest speaker who was an Olympic athlete, a triathlete, and she said that in an event, the body never breaks down, or hardly ever breaks down. What breaks down and lets you down is your mind. Your mind is the thing that lets you down. So if you can manage your mind, manage your thinking, then you're going to be able to achieve a lot more than what you're thinking or what you think you're capable of, because you don't have those demons interrupting, distracting you and holding you back. It was really powerful to hear somebody who has been through a lot, who has told us that you just need to be mentally tough and everything else will follow suit. So the last point that Tony Robbins makes on this episode is where he talks about you've been able to identify what's holding you back. Now what you need to do is try and figure out how you can shift, how you can take further action, how you can change your approach in order to make progress and not to let those things continue to hold you back. And guess what? All of those fears that we have, all those irrational fears that we have that poison us, all those false fears that we have can be conquered. And what fear absolutely hates is action. When you take bold action, then all of those fears that have been holding you back are just annihilated, are destroyed, because you've taken action. And even the smallest amount of action is more than enough to conquer even the greatest irrational fear. And we call them irrational fears because, as scientists tell us, 85%, 90%, 95%, or even 99% of those fears, that uncertainty, that doubt that you have in your mind, none of that will ever happen unless, of course, you continue to focus on it. Because Anthony tells us, where your focus goes, your energy flows. So you need to be focusing on the outcomes that you want rather than the problems and obstacles that are going to appear in the way. I'm walking through the forest here and there are lots of obstacles along the way, but I will continue to walk with confidence, knowing that whatever obstacle gets in my way, I'll find a way around it. Just like my grandchildren find a way to get around their parents, even easier to get around their grandparents, so too we will always find a solution to every problem, because human beings are teleological in nature. We love problems. We love problems. We love solving problems. We're actually problem-solving machines. The more problems we have, the more problems we embrace, the more problems we solve, the more success we're going to enjoy in life, and the more progress we're going to generate. Because problems help us what am I looking for? Problems help us with pattern creation. Anthony Robbins reminds us time and time again that most of the patterns that happen in the world, or most of the events happen in the world, are things that have happened before. There's nothing new in the world, and what we're encouraged to do is we're encouraged to know and to appreciate that history repeats itself. It doesn't repeat itself exactly the same way, but it repeats itself, and that everything is cyclical. There are ups, there are downs, there are highs, there are lows, there's good and bad. There's a lot of duality that continues to happen in the world, but we are able to use past experience, which is pattern recognition, to be able to sort out and anticipate what's going to happen. Anthony Robbins uses the metaphor of a Olympic or a champion ice skater who says that all other ice skaters will skate to where the puck is, whereas a champion ice skater will skate to where the puck is going to go. So we need anticipation in order to be in a position to enjoy that and to make the most of it. So there you go. And the last point I want to make is that in order to change, in order to improve, in order to take action, you need to express a thing called courage. But you can only express courage where there is fear. You can't express courage if you don't have fear in the first place. So once again, we need to understand that a lot of the fear that we have, a lot of the things that enable us to be courageous, is just us overriding the fears that may be there. Now, heroes in war do things. They become heroes because they've overridden their fear. They say, enough is enough. If I just sit here, I'll just be a target. So they just go for it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But they were going to die anyway. But they lived with honour. They tried to solve something. They tried to protect others. They were selfless in their actions. And they were courageous because they feared. They were fearful, but they were able to override that fear. And in many cases, it doesn't work. In many cases, it does work. As I mentioned before, it all depends on your fate. It all depends on God's will. And we just need to live life on our terms and to do things that are God-pleasing, and hopefully we can get to the point where we look back over our lives and we are fulfilled with all that we've done, all that we've achieved, or even the things that we haven't achieved. To be humble, to be in a position to help others, and you don't know how you're helping others, even by just being an example in of itself is also very, very powerful. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of all that I have learnt from Anthony Robbins over the years, episode 5 of 50 or more, and I look forward to coming to you again from another place with another message of empowerment from the many lessons that Anthony Robbins has been able to share to millions and millions of people throughout the world over the past 30 years. Anthony Robbins is the same age as me. We're both born in 1960, and I'm just proud to be able to say that we have somebody of my generation who has stepped up and been a leader in an environment and in a world which lacks strong leadership. And that in itself is a great testament to the great Anthony Robbins. Even though he makes lots and lots of money, he's also a philanthropist, and he's teaching other people, encouraging other people, setting a standard, a higher standard for other people so that they can live their lives and to contribute and do things which are going to hopefully lead and create a better world for many more people. Take care, Yassas, and all the best.